The incredible journey of life, from birth through infancy, childhood, puberty, adulthood, and a slow maturity to old age. This is the story of our lives from a unique perspective, deep inside our bodies. This is the journey of a human life, from the outside in. A fetus develops in the womb. It's an astonishing 40-week journey from a single cell to a baby ready to be born. Its body is a miracle of microscopic design. Tiny, perfectly formed organs, each made up of billions of perfectly functioning cells. These cells are the building blocks of our bodies. They make us what we are, 100,000 billion cells, all working in harmony. Inside every cell is the same extraordinary engine, the machine that tells each cell how to grow and what functions to perform. DNA is unique to every person. A chemical blueprint of instructions that creates each new life. This baby is ready to enter the world. A newborn person whose journey is about to begin. The journey starts with a challenge: breathe or die. These lungs have never breathed before. They're still full of amniotic fluid that protected them for 9 long months. The newborn is in danger of drowning. Then, the body kicks into survival mode. The adrenal glands, right above the kidneys, send adrenaline surging around the body. It shocks the lungs into life. Muscles we need to breathe suddenly start to spasm. And we take our first breath. It's the most important breath of our lives. The first of 700 million. Our lungs will pump air every single second as long as we live. Air rushes down the windpipe, down thousands of branching tubes, and into nearly 30 million tiny air sacs, the alveoli. These air sacs pull oxygen into our blood and pump out the carbon dioxide we exhale with every breath. And they do it non-stop for 80 years. At the moment of birth, everything changes. The physical link between mother and baby is broken for the first time. The first hour brings rapid change. All the baby's organs have to adapt to life outside the womb. It's a challenging and risky time. At this age, the heart is no bigger than a walnut. It's been pumping in the womb for 8 months, but now it has flaws that could be fatal. 2 holes, one in the aorta and one in the heart. In the womb, they diverted blood away from our inactive lungs. Now that we need the lungs, the holes seal shut. The heart is working normally, pumping blood through tens of thousands of miles of blood vessels. Other systems are also gearing up. The digestive tract is ready to clear itself out to make room for its first meal. The bowels are full of digested amniotic fluid and dead cells, a sticky green-black tar-like material called meconium. It's corrosive stuff. If it ends up in the baby's lungs during labor, it can attack the delicate lining. But here in the gut, meconium is harmless. The digestive tract flushes it out within days. As time passes, more sophisticated systems start to kick in. Our next challenge is the cold. It was 100 degrees in the womb. Here at home, 65-degree room temperature is a shock to the system. The area that controls temperature is deep within the base of our brains. When an adult is too cold or hot, this area sends out instructions for our cells to produce more or less energy. It's called the hypothalamus, and like all our other organs, at this age, it's still immature. The brain is under pressure, making 100 trillion calculations per second just to keep our bodies functioning. But it's still learning how, and now we're in danger of hypothermia. An infrared camera shows the struggle to keep warm as we lose precious body heat. The yellow areas show where we lose the most. Luckily, we're prepared. A layer of special tissue around our blood vessels and vital organs actively generates heat. It's fat, but this isn't regular fat. It's brown fat, a specialized type usually found in hibernating animals. It's packed with special heat-generating cells. Eventually, most of this fat will melt away as the hypothalamus matures and the liver and other organs take on the job of generating heat. Just hours old, we know almost nothing about the world. Everything we do relies on instinct. Feeding is a reflex. Normally, we have no more control over suckling than the urge to breathe. This is milk on its first journey down the esophagus to the stomach. Mother's milk is much more than the ultimate superfood. It also protects us from hidden danger. Outside the womb, bacteria are everywhere. invisible, and potentially deadly. Our day-old skin is under constant attack. There are 10 times more bacteria than human cells in and on our bodies. Our immune systems aren't developed yet, so we can't fight infections for ourselves. Amazingly, our mother fights them for us through her milk. The close contact between mother and baby means she absorbs the same germs that are attacking us. Her immune system creates antibodies. Then she delivers those antibodies back to us in her milk. Until our own immune systems develop, she will keep us safe. It's time to take on the world. It's been 4 weeks since birth. The baby has drunk nearly 30 pints of milk and has put on 2 pounds, a quarter of its body weight. It's time for its first trip outside. Even a visit to the grocery store can overload the senses. It's noisy, bright, and smelly. The nose is working overtime. High up inside, specialized nerves dangle in the airstream. They detect chemicals in the air and send an electrical signal to the brain, which interprets the signals as smells. The nerves are super sensitive. Every smell is a new sensation. The same goes for our hearing. Strange new world, strange new sounds. Sound waves vibrate the eardrum. On the other side of the eardrum, these tiny bones, the ossicles, vibrate in response. They're the smallest bones in the body, but without them, we would never hear a thing. They use leverage to amplify the vibrations, hitting the eardrum 22 times. The amplified vibrations now enter the inner ear, or cochlea. It's lined with delicate hairs. When vibrations pass through, the hairs vibrate. At the base are the fragile hairs for high-frequency sounds. At the top, low-frequency hairs. Each one 200 times thinner than a hair on our head. Over time, loud noises will damage these hairs. But at this age, they're perfect. Our hearing will never be this good again. The story is different for eyesight. We're born with very underdeveloped vision. Even at 1 month, the world is blurred and mostly black and white. Every aspect of our vision is rudimentary. The eye muscles are immature, keeping us from pointing our eyes where we want to. Inside the eye, the lens muscles still can't focus, and the lens flips the image it receives. All through life, we see the world upside down. The picture only gets reoriented in our brains. Right now, the picture is on the retina, the screen at the back of the eye. The retina has two types of cells, rods and cones, which transform the light that hits them into electric signals. The cones detect color information, but because they're not developed yet, we see mostly in black and white during our first month. From the retina, the signals travel along two thick nerves under the brain. At the back is where we process visual information. When the image arrives, the real challenge begins. Our immature brains haven't learned to interpret the data yet. That's changing fast. At 2 months, we can distinguish colors and shades. At 4 months, we can identify our mother's face. By 8 months, we have 20/20 vision. Along with our perfect eyesight comes a growth spurt. We start packing on pounds. We add a quarter to our body weight every month. After 3 months, it slows down. Lucky for us, if we kept growing that fast, we'd weigh 150 tons by age 4, the same as a blue whale. At 8 months, all our senses work. We're beginning to explore the world, and the sense we use most is touch. Touch something too hot, and temperature sensors in the skin send nerve signals racing up the arm, up the spinal cord, and into the brain, all at 200 miles per hour. The brain detects the signal, interprets it as pain, and fires another signal back to the muscles. We move the hand away. We have sensory nerve receptors all over our skin, but some areas are more sensitive than others. The hands, face, and mouth. There are 9,000 sensory receptors on the tongue alone, which is why babies use their mouths to explore. But there's another reason for all the gnawing. Something painful is happening inside the baby's mouth. Her first teeth are coming through. Milk teeth form deep in our gums while we're still in the womb. Now, one by one, they burst through. It's painful, but it's progress. At 8 months into life's 80-year journey, the senses are operating at full capacity. Every sensation is a new surprise. And with her new teeth, she can take on more solid foods. Digestion starts in the mouth. Teeth grind up the food. Then, special glands under the tongue pump out saliva to help break down and lubricate the food on its 12-hour, 13-foot journey through the gut. It'll pass from the stomach into the coils of the small intestine, before finally passing into the large intestine. Waves of contracting muscle keep the food moving, a process called peristalsis. These contractions are so powerful, we can even eat upside down. For the first time, a new camera shows a high-definition view of how food travels through our bodies and into our stomachs. Food enters the stomach through a hole at the top. The stomach is a bag of muscle that churns, squashes, and squeezes food into liquid. At the same time, acids break the food down. The stomach walls protect themselves with a lining of mucus. Without it, the acids could digest parts of the stomach itself, causing stomach ulcers. About an hour later, the stomach squeezes the broken down food out through a tiny hole called the pyloric sphincter. The food enters the small intestine, an 11-foot coil of tube where we absorb most of the nutrients. The interior wall of the small intestine is lined with millions of microscopic projections called villi. These increase the surface area of the gut, making it easier to absorb nutrients. First, the pancreas pumps out a juice that neutralizes stomach acid. Then bile from the liver breaks down the fats into tiny droplets. Smaller droplets are easier for the intestine to absorb. After an hour and a half, the small intestine has absorbed most of the nutrients from the food. It's time for what remains to move on. It enters the large intestine through this, the ileocecal sphincter, a valve that keeps our food from going back where it came from. What's left is a mix of waste food and dead cells from the walls of the gut. The large intestine's main job is to extract water from it. Lots of bacteria live here too, but it isn't because of an infection. We actually need them. They produce enzymes that break down complex carbohydrates in our food, carbohydrates we couldn't otherwise digest. Finally, after about 12 hours, we expel what's left of our first meal. One year old. We're mobile. We've perfected the art of crawling. Our bones are stronger. They need to be. we're getting pretty heavy. At birth, the skeleton is mostly cartilage, the same material as our ears. Cartilage is flexible. It's what allows us to squeeze through the birth canal. But after birth, our soft skeletons are a problem. They need to be rigid to support our growing bodies and protect our vital organs. So right from birth, the cartilage starts to harden. Special cells called osteoblasts lay down minerals that turn soft cartilage into hard bone. Some bones even fuse together. At birth, we have gaps between the plates of the skull, which allow the skull to deform during birth. Through our first year, these gaps gradually close until the skull is finally complete. As our skeletons develop, so does our desire to get around. We're about to hit one of the major milestones in life, standing on 2 feet. The key isn't strength, it's balance. And the secret to standing is hidden deep in our ears. Beyond the ossicles, the bones we use for hearing, the inner ear is made up of 3 looping structures. Each loop is the size of a dime, and they're oriented to cover all 3 planes. These semicircular canals are part of our ears, but they have nothing to do with hearing. They're filled with liquid, and they tell us what's up, what's down, and what's on the level. The liquid inside sloshes against sensor hairs lining the tubes. The hairs send data to the brain about how we are oriented and our direction of movement. These are our organs of balance. Once we've mastered balance, we're one step closer to walking. Now there's no limit to where we can go and what we can learn. From a baby to a toddler, we're embarking on our most formative years, a time when we'll put our growing brains and developing immune systems to the test. Age 2. We've survived infancy and can stand on our own 2 feet. Next up is a uniquely human challenge, learning to talk. Talking takes a lot of brain power. A 2-year-old learns 10 new words a day. This is Broca's area, the region at the side of the brain used for speech production and comprehension. Language is what separates us from other animals. We exchange complex thoughts and ideas, and teach our children not just by showing, but by telling. As our brains develop, we gain other uniquely human qualities. We're aware of our own identities and individuality. We gain the ability to think for ourselves. And we're forming memories that will last a lifetime, like our first day at school. We may remember what was going on around us, but the real action is happening inside. The brain is a mass of 100 billion nerve cells. Between them, they generate enough electricity to keep a light bulb burning for a day. The cells communicate using electric impulses. Each impulse is a tiny fragment of thought or memory. When we hear a new word,
My grandpa's veteran.
our ears convert the sound into electrical impulses in our brains. The brain can learn because the connections between brain cells aren't permanent. The brain rewires itself. Nerve cells send out tendrils called axons, constantly forming new connections. The cells meet at a tiny gap called a synapse. Chemicals bridge the gap to allow the impulse to continue the chain. The new connections form a pattern, a new memory. We learn by making new connections between brain cells and then reinforcing them through repetition. The stronger the reinforcement, the more likely the memory will stick.
What does the word veteran mean?
When someone asks us to recall that memory, the same pattern of axons fires, and the memory comes alive. Our brains respond by sending messages to the nerves that drive the muscles in our arms. We raise our hands.
Me, miss.
In childhood, our brains are primed to learn, and they're growing fast. The rapid growth allows our brains to easily form new connections, an ability that will fade with age. And while our brains keep learning, our bodies do the same. It's the immune system's job to learn to recognize infections. Every germ that enters the body carries the potential threat of disease. But first, the germ has to get there. Immunity doesn't begin inside our bodies. We start fighting germs the moment they touch us. We have an arsenal of defenses against infection. Our eyebrows and eyelashes, ear hairs, and nasal hairs catch airborne bacteria. Sweat, tears, and mucus wash them off. Our skin constantly sheds its top layer of cells, taking bacteria with it. The mouth is especially vulnerable. Here, too, we are armed and ready to fire. Each squirt of saliva contains lysozyme, an enzyme specially targeted to destroy bacteria. Our saliva glands are tiny, yet they produce nearly half a gallon of saliva every single day. Sometimes, a pathogen breaks through these external defenses, and our immature immune system reacts to prevent infection. Tiny viruses travel through our blood and probe our skin cells for signs of weakness. The virus hijacks a cell and manufactures thousands of copies of it. Then, the infected cell ruptures, spreading even more viruses around the body. This particular virus causes a rash, chickenpox. The fever that comes with infection is a sign that the body is fighting back. Heat slows down the spread of the disease because viruses don't reproduce well when it's hot. The immune system kicks into action. White blood cells latch onto infected cells and pump in poisonous proteins, which kills the cell and the viruses. Crusty skin blisters signal the battle waged between the immune system and its viral assailants. Each one contains cellular debris and the remains of 100,000 viruses. It may be unpleasant, but getting diseases like this when we're young is vital for our developing immune systems. Our bodies create memory molecules against the virus, antibodies. We used to rely on antibodies from mother's milk. Now, we make our own. If we catch the same disease when we're older, the antibodies enable our bodies to recognize the virus instantly. White blood cells wipe it out before it has a chance to take hold. This is why childhood is the perfect time for vaccination. Vaccines are harmless doses of viruses like mumps, polio, or rubella. The body creates antibodies as if it had really been infected. Now, if we ever catch the real thing, the body will recognize it and attack. In its first decade, the human body changes beyond recognition. But now,